Should property investors fear an incoming Labour government? That is the topic on today's Property Answers show, the show that answers all of your property questions. Now, I'm joined by two wonderful experts. You've probably seen them on Property Elevator. This is John and Ranjan. Hello there, how are you today?
Hi.
Very good. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel, and also click that bell button so you can be notified for any of our videos. So John, I'll start this one off for you. Should property investors fear an incoming Labour government?
Yes.
There you go. There you have it.
Is there any bias there?
You could say I'm slightly biased because, for people who don't know, I was a Conservative chairman of Ipswich Association. We won last time. I don't like to keep mentioning it. And I'm now president, so I am involved quite heavily in politics. But what we must remember, at the moment, they're wolves in sheep's clothing, the Labour Party. They're all coming across as fairly cuddly, fairly nice-ish, as best they can come over that way. But they are a socialist party. They don't really believe in home ownership. They certainly don't believe in someone owning more than one house. They just don't. They're very pro tenants, so you can expect them to be some sort of caps potentially on rent, which hasn't worked in Scotland very well, and it certainly hasn't worked in Southern Ireland. And the biggest problem, I think the biggest worry people should have as a landlord, and this government haven't been great, let's be honest, for the landlords. Michael Gove's been a disaster, the housing secretary. However, under a Labour government, you may not be able to get possession of your tenanted property that you rent out. In which case, that property could potentially be worth 30% less than vacant possession value. People don't seem to grab hold of this. People say to me, oh, well, John, I don't want to have it empty anyway. Well, your bank, when you want to refinance, and your bank say to you, what's it worth, and get it valued, and it's valued 30% less than it was because you can't get vacant possession, I think they might understand what I'm saying.
Understood, yeah. Ranjan?
Sometimes people say a lot in opposition.
Do you agree with me or not?
Well, not quite.
Well, what a surprise.
Sometimes people say a lot in opposition, but when they get into the corridors of power, they're limited by what they can actually implement. Now, Keir Starmer is not Jeremy Corbyn. He is in the more in the Tony Blair mould, which is encouraging because I think all entrepreneurs had a very good run under the Tony Blair era. The other thing I think is that in the 1970s, when we had some extreme socialist policies about getting your properties back and everything like that, the majority of those properties didn't have mortgages on them. Today, many buy-to-let properties have mortgages on them.
Let me ask you
and
a quick
the big
question.
banks will be a massive lobby because they wouldn't want their security to be stuffed by not being able to get it back. So I think that banking base will be a massive lobby that will prevent them doing a lot of that stuff in government.
At the moment, 50% of properties in the UK have got a mortgage on them. 50%.
Is that not 50%?
You think it might be more than that, but
But
it's
that's
not.
general property, not buy-to-lets.
That's general, yes.
General.
Not buy-to-lets.
No, not buy-to-let. Virtually every buy-to-let's got a loan on it.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a major problem. But what you must remember, Ranjan, they're the people that vote Labour mainly rent properties. The people that vote Tories traditionally are people that own their own homes. Now, this time round, 10% only of people under 40 allegedly are likely to vote Tory. So that's going to change because a lot of those people will be homeowners. So the whole thing is changing. But that's a major thing to remember is that most tenants vote Labour. They've got nothing to lose, really.
I've always wondered, actually, whether as a landlord we can restrict our tenants from putting Vote Labour signs in the windows of our properties. Because I do drive around some properties and see those signs in the window.
And also, viewers, what do you think what Ranjan just said there? Comment below.
Yeah, make it a good comment.
Make it a good comment though, yes. Actually, leads me on to the next question for you. So Ranjan, in your assessment, how might changes in taxation policies, such as capital gains tax or property taxes, affect the probability and viability of property investments?
I think under Labour taxation, particularly of rents, socialism doesn't like rent seekers, so they will aim to tax that more. I think in recent years, because of changes that the Tories have brought in, a lot of property landlords have moved to owning properties in a limited company.
Limited companies, yeah.
So that means that you can't really say there's one rule for one limited company and one rule for a different limited company. If it's in corporate ownership, the rules governing taxation should be the same for all corporate companies.
Yeah. John?
Well, I sort of agree with you, Ranjan, sadly. Yeah, it is. But the thing is, this Conservative government have actually done Labour's work for them.
Yes.
Really, haven't they?
See.
You
So how bad can it get?
How much worse can it get? I mean, in the last budget, of course, the Chancellor very kindly put the capital gain rate down from 28% to 25%, wasn't it, Ranjan?
24,
24 to people who want to sell their property. But surely the government need landlords to retain their properties in order to rent them to people. 4.5 million people rent off private landlords?
Is that the number?
Yeah.
Wow.
So why are they doing encouraging people to sell? It doesn't make any sense.
That encouragement is only for people that own properties in their own name, which are buy-to-let.
Yes, I understand that. I can work that one out for myself, thank you.
No, I mean, it seems to be a discouragement of the small-scale landlords,
yes,
as opposed to the larger landlords.
You make a good point.
It's the same with the multiple dwellings relief that they abolished. You know, that affects the smaller landlord, whereas if you're buying 6 or more properties together, you'd claim commercial stamp duty rates. So it just seems a bit odd that this government has laser targeted someone who's in a job perhaps and got 1 or 2 buy-to-lets as a pension.
And may I say, virtually all of them would have been or have been Conservative voters. So that's even more crazy.
Yeah, which actually leads me on to the third question we have for you. Are there specific regulations or laws related to tenant rights and rent control that may be introduced under a Labour government, and how these could impact property investors?
These are very good questions, aren't
Thank
they?
you.
I mean, Ranjan's going to struggle to answer this one. The answer is I believe a Labour government will come in and try and control the rents.
Right.
Now, what they've done in Scotland recently, and a lot of things get tested in Scotland because they're a socialist government. A lot of things get tested there a little bit.
The poll tax.
The poll tax was,
Back in the day.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You're going back, you're showing your age there.
History books.
You're showing your age there. But what's happened in Scotland is they brought in a rent cap at 3% a year. Now that sounds pretty drastic. And of course, all that means is less landlords will want to carry on renting their properties out. They want to sell them and so on. But what's happened is when that property's become vacant, the landlords have whacked them up 20%, knowing that they can only get a 3% increase a year. So it's actually backfired. And in Ireland, in 2016, they brought in the same thing, rent caps. And in 2022, only 620 properties were on the rental market in the whole of Ireland in August that year. And what they've done since, they've now come up with a scheme, the Irish government, where the longer you retain your property to rent out, the lower tax you pay. So they've turned it right round from what they were trying to do.
Oh wow, what do you think, Ranjan?
It's been a disaster, rent controls. We've got to distinguish between rent control and rent capping. So what capping is the rate of increase of rents is capped.
Yes.
That is more likely than rent control. So what that does is it discourages anyone from being good landlords. Now, for example, if you're in one of our properties, you've been there 2 or 3 years, we take a view. You're a good tenant, you pay the rent all the time, we don't keep rents strictly at market levels. What this forces all landlords to do is every year you need to make sure that your rents are at market levels, and particularly in the run-up to the general election, everyone watching this should be taking all their properties and making sure they increase the rents to market levels. Because if you don't, that will be the baseline, and that will be what rent capping will cap you from doing. So if your rents lag behind by 3 years, and they introduce a rent cap of 3%, that would be what you can increase it by. So it forces everyone to maximise their rents.
Yeah.
It does.
Good point.
All these things can backfire on them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
All these types of ideas.
Brilliant. And a final question for you both. Could you discuss potential measures aimed at incentivising affordable housing or social housing innovatives and how they might influence the property market? Who'd like to start that one off?
Well, I think the issue is that under a Labour government, the housing policy tends to be much more towards social housing. So whether it's their planning policy, they will encourage building of social housing units and ownership for folks on benefits and that kind of stuff. So all the policy will be geared around that. And the private rented sector, for the two young professionals not wanting to buy, wanting that flexibility in their life, that whole section of the market will largely be ignored.
And John?
Or punished.
They're almost punished for being aspirational, and that's the problem under Labour. There's no enthusiasm for aspiration, in my view. I think what they've got a 2-year honeymoon period, and in that period they can look at Greenbelt and change it. Greenbelt came into around London in 1937. It came around in the whole country, Greenbelt, in 1946, and it needs changing. It's very dated. The Conservative Party have really struggled with it because a lot of their MPs are in the south, and it's very, very sensitive. But there are areas that should be in Greenbelt that are not, and there's areas in Greenbelt that should be released, which aren't in very picturesque areas. I know certainly of 3 or 4 areas where there's actually rubbish tips. Technically, they're in Greenbelt, which is absolutely crackers. Now, I'm going to ask Ranjan a question, if I may.
Just please,
to
take it away.
What can you build? What can the local authority build on Greenbelt land?
On the local authority?
Yes.
Probably anything they like.
No.
Oh,
Go on then.
They can build a park and ride.
Oh.
They can cover it with tarmac. That's fine. But no one else can do anything in Greenbelt apart from local authority that can put up a park and ride. How mad is that?
Greenbelt is a very funny concept, and it's relatively unique to the UK. A lot of countries designate areas of natural beauty and have national parks and reserves or whatever. And they have them in designated areas. They don't put a stranglehold around every city and say it can't expand. That seems a little bit ludicrous.
By the way, I believe that's 1-0 to me.
I have to keep score now, don't I? Yeah,
definitely. We're very competitive, as you know now. We're very competitive.
We'll do a tally score. So in just one sentence then, John, should property investors fear an incoming Labour government? One sentence.
Yes, they should.
Oh, nice and sweet.
I don't think it's going to be as bad as all that. This lot has done the job for them. And on aspiration, by the way, in the last budget, the Conservatives put extra tax on business travel. Doesn't that suck away business class tickets? Doesn't that suck away aspiration?
It does indeed.
Can I just say, it doesn't affect him because he goes first class anyway.
Oh, I thought because I go economy, Ryanair.
I think that's time to end this. Thank you so much, Ranjan and John, for that one. Great discussion there on Property Answers today. Now, if you like this video, please remember to like, subscribe and click that bell as well. Thanks for tuning in, and more will be coming from Property Answers very soon.